A photo leaked from inside one of America's most exclusive country clubs. Smashed wood. Splintered metal. A locker room that had stood for over a century, torn apart in a moment of rage. The man responsible was not some anonymous member. He was a US Open champion, one of the best golfers on the planet, and within weeks, he would be banned from the very club that hosted the tournament where it happened. This is the story of how Wyndham Clark went from major champion to outcast, and the long road he walked to find his way back. Wyndham Clark was not always a name associated with controversy. In 2023, he won the US Open at Los Angeles Country Club, holding off Rory McIlroy down the stretch to claim the title. That victory propelled him into the upper tier of professional golf. He climbed as high as number 3 in the world rankings. He earned a spot on the US Ryder Cup team. He qualified for the Olympics. By every measure, he was a rising star with a major championship to his name and a career trending upward. But 2025 told a different story. The same player who had once been celebrated for his composure under pressure began showing a very different side of himself, one that would dominate headlines for all the wrong reasons. The first crack appeared in May 2025 at the PGA Championship, held at Quail Hollow Club. After a poor tee shot, Clark flung his driver in frustration. The club struck a sponsor sign near the tee box, leaving a large hole in it. The driver itself broke in the process. The sign belonged to T-Mobile, one of Clark's own corporate sponsors. Nobody was standing behind him at the time, which meant the incident caused property damage but no injury. Still, the image of a major champion losing control on a nationally televised stage drew immediate criticism. Clark addressed it publicly afterward. As professionals, we are expected to remain professional even when frustrated, and I unfortunately let my emotions get the best of me, he said in a statement after the PGA Championship. He added a promise to do better. I promise to better the way I handle my frustrations on the course going forward, and hope you all can forgive me in due time. At the time, it seemed like an isolated lapse. It would not be the last. 1 month later, the situation escalated dramatically. The 2025 US Open was held at Oakmont Country Club, located roughly 15 miles outside Pittsburgh. Clark entered the tournament needing a strong finish, but his second round unraveled. He made a bogey on the final hole, missing the cut by a single stroke. He had climbed to 8 over at the midway point. What happened next took place away from cameras, inside the clubhouse. Clark damaged a locker in Oakmont's century-old locker room. Media were not permitted inside that space, so the public had no immediate knowledge of what occurred. That changed when a photograph of the damage leaked and spread rapidly across social media. The image went viral within hours, and golf fans and journalists alike began asking the same question: what exactly happened in that room? The location made the incident even more significant. Oakmont is not an ordinary golf course. It has hosted the US Open 9 times, more than any other course in the country, and was recently named an anchor site under the USGA's new rotation strategy for the championship. This was not a minor club. It was one of the sport's most storied and historic venues, and Clark had damaged a piece of its history during the same week the tournament's spotlight was on him. Oakmont's leadership did not stay silent for long. Club president John Lynch sent a letter to club members addressing the incident directly. Several of you have inquired about the situation involving Wyndham Clark and the steps being taken in response to his recent behavior. Following multiple discussions with the USGA and the OCC board, a decision has been made that Mr. Clark will no longer be permitted on OCC property. The letter made clear this was not a temporary suspension without conditions. This decision will remain in effect unless formally reconsidered and approved by the board. Reinstatement was tied to specific requirements. Reinstatement would be contingent upon Mr. Clark fulfilling a number of specific conditions, including full repayment for damages, a meaningful contribution to a charity of the board's choosing, and the successful completion of counseling and/or anger management sessions. The letter closed with a simple line thanking members for their patience. Thank you for your understanding and continued support. This letter was intended to remain an internal communication between the club and its members. It did not stay that way. Golf Digest obtained a copy and published its contents, and the story was quickly picked up and confirmed by outlets including ESPN. Clark was clearly unhappy that the private matter had become public knowledge. Speaking after his final round at the British Open, he addressed the leak directly. We're trying to keep it private between Oakmont, myself and the USGA. I'm just happy we have a pathway moving forward, and like you said, I'm hoping we can get past this and move on and hope there's no ill will towards me and Oakmont. When asked specifically why the letter became public, his response was brief. We were hoping it was going to be private, he said. I'll just leave it at that. What followed was a stretch of tournaments where Clark repeatedly addressed the controversy in press conferences. The week immediately after the Oakmont incident, he played the Travelers Championship in Cromwell, Connecticut. He opened with a round of 64. When reporters asked about the locker room damage, he offered his first detailed comments. "Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of highs and lows in my career, especially this year some lows. I made a mistake that I deeply regret. I'm very sorry for what happened." He followed that with a statement about wanting to move forward. "But I'd also like to move on, not only for myself but for Oakmont, for the USGA, and kind of focus on the rest of the year and things that come up," he said. The following week, at the Genesis Scottish Open, Clark continued reflecting on the situation, describing it as something that had ultimately forced him to reassess his mindset. He carried that same message into the British Open at Royal Portrush, where he turned in his best major championship performance since his 2023 US Open win, finishing tied for fourth after a final round of 65. He discussed the broader context of his struggles that year. "I've been pretty open about my mental shift and change to get better, and I did that in 23 and 24, and then having a tough year and all the expectations and just frustration all coming together, and I did 2 stupid things," he said. "But one thing that it did do is wake me up and get me back into the person I know I am and the person I want to be." He also addressed whether he expected to play Oakmont again, since the course is not scheduled to host another US Open until 2033, which happens to be the final year of the 10-year exemption he earned by winning the tournament in 2023. "That's up to them," he said when asked if he'll get to play there again. "I really don't know. I would hope so. I did something awful, and I'm really sorry for it. Hopefully they have it in their heart to forgive me, and maybe in the future I'll be able to play there." While Clark worked through his apology tour in press rooms, the public reaction online told a very different story. Golf forums and social media platforms were largely unforgiving. Commentators online repeatedly pointed to the structure of his apologies, criticizing the pattern of expressing regret while simultaneously asking people to move past the situation quickly. One widely shared sentiment characterized his statements as acknowledging wrongdoing without fully accepting accountability for the consequences. The nickname "Blow Pig" began circulating across golf social media accounts and forums as a direct reference to the incident, and it stuck. Comparisons were drawn to other professional golfers known for on-course temper, including Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy, both of whom have had visible outbursts during their careers. Online commentary frequently suggested that Clark's pattern of behavior, combined with the manner of his apologies, was viewed differently by fans than similar incidents involving other players. It is worth noting this was the tenor of public and social media sentiment at the time, not a universal or official verdict on his character. Nearly a year later, the narrative shifted. Clark won the CJ Cup Byron Nelson, finishing at 30 under par with a final round of 60. In his post-victory interview, he chose to address Oakmont directly and immediately, before discussing almost anything else about the win itself. "I have to first thank a lot of people," Clark said after winning the CJ Cup Byron Nelson, "because what happened at Oakmont wasn't the greatest thing." He went on to describe the difficult stretch as something that ultimately fueled his comeback. "You know, the greatest thing about having a downfall like that is the comeback. Today feels really special after having a tough year and grinding it out," he said. The win brought renewed attention to the mental health work he had been doing throughout his career, including his relationship with PGA Tour sports psychologist Julie Elliott, who he credited with helping him reach number 3 in the world following the 2023 season. During the same tournament week, he had a caddy patch reading Unlock, the name of a mental health app he has stated he hopes to launch. Describing his mental state during the record-setting final round, Clark used language strikingly different from the anger that defined his 2025 season. "Here it just almost felt like I was playing at home," Clark said, "and every hole was a new hole. I didn't worry that I just made 6 birdies or that I needed to make more." He referred to this mindset as a calm zone, a phrase he had also used during a strong performance at the Masters earlier in the year. As of June 2026, Clark has continued discussing the Oakmont chapter publicly, including an appearance on SiriusXM's US Open Radio, where he reflected on the experience and what he had taken from it. "I am, both on and off the golf course, just really genuinely happy with where I'm at," he said during that conversation. What remains unclear publicly is whether all of the specific reinstatement conditions outlined by John Lynch, the repayment, the charitable contribution, and the completion of counseling sessions, have been fully satisfied. The next time Oakmont hosts the US Open is 2033, the same year Clark's exemption from his 2023 title expires, setting up a natural deadline for whether he will ever step foot on the property again as a competitor.